Right, cool. So we should all be coming through clear. Hello, everybody. It's me and Matt. And we're here. We're going to talk about Eternals and Magic.
We
We've got
are.
a total of one question via the Facebook. So
Hey, we should definitely not ask that question.
There's a certain perversity to that is very PD. I have the chat over here. We are just the two of us today, so my hope is that every time Matt goes off on 1,000 words wall of text talking, I can just check the chat to see if anything interesting. We were just talking about the fact actually that this is the Eternal section of the wiki in printed form, and there's quite a lot of it.
There's quite a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the Eternal pages with a bit of artwork added in. Yeah, gosh. Edited by Severin Teilhard von Holberg, writer of contentious encyclicals.
He does it all in Word. It's mad. Mad, really? I tell you. Yeah.
Even I export things as... Well, actually, no, I do it all in Word and then export it. Not Word, Open Office. And then exports.
But we don't expect any better of you, Andy.
No, that is very fair. Look at all this artwork in here as well, which has clearly not been done with paint. By which I mean MS Paint, not, you know...
Yeah,
yeah. Wow, how would that even work? Anyway, sorry. Do we want to deal with the question we've actually been asked first?
Yeah, we should definitely start with our first question. That's what the cool kids do. It's like it's interactive with your audience.
You have no idea what the cool kids do you?
No. I've got one.
Yeah. Matt, you are apparently 10 decibels louder than I am.
What can I say? It's just like in real life. Can you turn down my volume? Can I turn down my volume?
It's not a function of that. So let me try. Is that making any difference?
I think it's just like real life. I'm just 10 decibels louder than everyone around me.
That is entirely possible.
It's probably not, though, is it? It's probably a technical issue.
It is.
I could move my mic further away.
Talk quieter.
Is it quieter now? This is my normal speaking volume.
I'm just staring at the chat.
I'm going to move my mic further away. Have you done something technical at your end?
I've turned the volume slider off on my laptop.
Oh, right. Has that turned you up or me down? That's the question.
It's better. Just a minor irritant.
I can settle for being a minor irritant.
A very good point. As Bucket of K points out, it might be that I have you... Oh, this is gonna let people see behind the scenes, but let's all just not worry about it for a moment. Yeah, I've got you at 200% volume on Discord.
I did say you should turn me down in Discord.
Right. Everybody ignore anything that just appeared on the left-hand side of the screen. I don't think there's anything contentious in there. I have to check that actually. I might have just exposed Andy's secret chat room on our PD servers to the world. What were we talking about? Is that any better on the sound thing? You need to say something, Matt.
Oh, I was talking about being cool. No, I think we were talking about we should definitely ask our question. One solitary, lonely question.
Well, we were just mostly going to chat today anyway. It's too nice a day to worry about that sort of thing. This is
beautiful.
Lovely Empire weather.
It is lovely Empire weather. Fucking. Excuse me. Yeah, it's great weather.
So Gordon Nickel asked about Winged Messenger, and there were a couple of parts to it. How much of our Winged Messenger communication is spam? How do we process them out of character, and how would we improve them?
How would we improve them? That's an interesting question.
We'll worry about that later because we've had a whole design iteration on improving Winged Messengers.
We have, yeah.
So Winged Messenger, for people who don't know, is a comparatively low magnitude autumn ritual that lets you send a message to a named person whose address you know. Man, that is the clause I think a lot of people forget. Whose address you know. About anything you like. Now, when we first did it, that was all there was to it. You piled up a little bit of mana and you sent a letter to somebody. Then we did a whole design thing on it and changed it. So these days, it's still a reasonably cheap ritual in crystal mana, but you have to use a specially prepared letter, which has such great concepts as character limits and specific font types on it that we print out at God, and it needs iridescent gloaming as an additional material component. Anybody can make one of the letters, which they do are using the downtime system, the database, the whatever, the front end, the computers. They use the computers in God. Anybody can make a message. It costs them, they need to have an iridescent gloaming in their inventory. And then when you cast Winged Messenger on it, it goes to whoever you have addressed that letter to. And that is roughly how we changed it. So I've summarized.
I think you missed out 2 key details.
Okay, go on. Which did I miss?
One is that it summons a magical winged messenger that carries your message. That, to me, is really important.
It absolutely does. And as somebody who's delivered winged messengers by pretending to be a giant invisible bird in the past, I think it is a real high point of that particular ritual. And what was the other detail?
Definitely. The other detail is you missed out that some genius coded the computers so that when you create your specially prepared message, we have the text that you put on that message already in our database. So you type the message onto our computers instead of us typing the message onto our computers. That turned out to be a huge improvement.
I have lost if I had a quid for every time we've got to the downtime system and looked at a winged messenger in the olden days, and whole chunks of it were little bracketed things like couldn't read this bit or Siswatch question mark next to it, it would be, yeah, we should never have created a ritual that allowed you to send basically a beer mat to plot with a question mark at the bottom of it, which is what we did with the original Winged Messenger. You think we'd have learned, actually, given Maelstrom?
You would think we'd have learned, yeah. But remember that Empire is 3 times as big as Maelstrom, so requires 3 times as many things to go wrong before we learn from them.
We assume that because it's 3 times bigger, the player's handwriting would be 3 times better.
That's bigger, 3 times bigger. Everyone's handwriting would be 3 times bigger. That's definitely how that works.
So what is it for? What it's for is it's so that you can communicate with people who aren't on the field. It's a lever so that you can try and get the plot machine moving. It's a way to respond to certain types of plot. Wings of Fortune, for example. We were talking about geniuses. Some genius recently realised that if you make a tiny little infographic of a winged messenger symbol and put a little note next to it saying Bob of Bob's home, Bob's land, is a suitable target for winged messengers next to it, you could direct people in the direction of NPCs who are actually appearing in this movie rather than NPCs who aren't. So we've had several particularly political ones. I think the most obvious example recently was the Yasavian uprising civil war setup, where we made explicit the winged messenger addresses for the various factions in it. What else is it? It's basically the 2 things it's for, isn't it? It's a way for us as well to send messages to people on the field, should we need to.
Yeah, it's a sort of justification for why this message is in your pack.
And the first part of Gordon's question was how much spam do we get? And I don't think we really get any, do we?
No, I don't think we ever got much spam. And I'm not even sure how we would know it was spam.
It depends what you mean of a spam. Any message to anybody through any method that says we must talk,
okay,
is basically the equivalent of a penis enlargement pill.
It's harsh.
It is, but it gives us nothing to work on. So at the absolute best, what you would prompt with that would be an encounter with an NPC. Whoa. I'm slightly worried about why Twitch keeps going green on my tablet. Anyway, sorry.
Maybe it's the internet that's gone green. It broke the other day. Now maybe it's gone green.
I've completely forgotten what I was saying now because of that.
We're talking about spam. We're talking about spam.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. The best you could get with the "We Must Talk" message is an encounter with an NPC who is in no position to make any decisions about anything. Who turns up to say, "What is it you wanted to talk about?" And we really don't like doing those encounters.
No,
they're a waste of everybody's time. Basically, it's what Winged Messenger and things like Missive for Dog were the other big communication which was designed to prevent us having to do.
You hit a really important point there, Andy, because effectively, if you write to someone and say, "Oh, we must talk," so we got to brief that NPC, but we don't know any idea what you're going to talk about. So then we brief the NPC, we put that NPC into play. That NPC attempts to find you, not a given. If the NPC finds you, they have no capacity really to respond to what you want because we have no idea what it is. But now what they do is they frantically have to try and take down as accurately as they can what it is you're going to communicate. This is what we want to talk about. And then they could come back and talk to plot team and go, oh, this was what they wanted. All of which could be circumvented if you just put that in your original message.
Interesting. I'm thinking about the plenipotentiary example, which is another communication one. These days, we're also likely to do an encounter. Having had enough of those, NPC tries to find out what PC wants. We'll have an encounter where an NPC turns up and says, this is what we want to talk about. And the PC will say, this is what I want to talk about. And the NPC will say, tough.
Tough, yeah.
Tough. This is what we're talking about. We can talk about what you want to talk about afterwards. Sorry.
In the future. Another time.
Another time. I'll definitely take that message back, and it will fall through the cracks because it's not using one of the methods supported by our system for tracking communication. We hate people giving things to NPCs.
Just to be clear, we don't deliberately think, it's just because it is a massive operation, and trying to track everything. If we can't basically get it in a wing message or a plenipotentiary, if we can't get the core facts down and stored electronically. I mean, we used to have a saying, didn't we? No piece of paper survives the event. Yeah. If you've handed it in on a piece of paper, rain and the weather and PD will have destroyed that piece of paper before the end of the event. It's just, there's no chance it'll have survived. It's not true. Some super careful people can keep paper, but
they can. I have a couple of glossy boxes, which is my my Empire event filing system, just chock-a-block full of pieces of paper. I keep all the Sodogwa messages so I can eat them during events.
The point is, we create these channels of communication because they're super efficient. In the real world, you might think that the best way to get yourself the attention of the powers that be is to sort of circumvent the customary channels of communication. But in Empire, it works absolutely the opposite way round. The best way to get yourself to the attention of an Eternal or an NPC or anyone else is to use the standard method of communication. Without a shadow of a doubt, that is your best way of calling that person's attention. Because everything else will just get lost in the white noise of an event.
So, yeah, we don't really have spam.
It costs too much for spam.
It costs too much for spam. Yeah.
If emails cost £2.50 a time, I'm confident that the number of offers to enlarge your penis that are in your inbox would dramatically reduce.
Probably.
I'm pretty certain.
No, I was thinking of a whole number of scenarios where it wouldn't, but that's neither here nor there. It's like opt in rather than opt out. So
spam emails are a real world demonstrable evidence that free things make the baby Jesus cry.
No, that is very true. I will go.
If spam emails cost 2p, if emails cost 2p, spam would disappear tomorrow. That's all it would take. Free things make the baby Jesus cry. So in Empire,
which is why our reliable communication methods use most often currency. Because we learned valuable lessons from, as Swishpod was pointing out in the chat, prayers at Maelstrom, which were free. And I once moved house and had to throw out 2 plastic bin bags full of prayers, paper prayers. This was before we'd implemented an electronic system, and I genuinely intended to type them all off onto our database when I took them home from the events over the course of a year. But they ended up in 2 massive black bin bags. They'd been read at the event, but dear God, did they not get onto anywhere where anybody else could read them after the event. Man, I felt bad, but what are you going to do? All those tiny prayers. Or there's an opportunity cost, which is where plenipotentiary would come in. You only get 1 event. We're primed for it. It uses the same system as all our rituals do, in that it gets entered onto the database at the event. It's another reason why we keep a character limit on it. Frankly, I can imagine a day in which we somehow twiddle together a way where your plenipotentiary message has to be typed up on a specially prepared missive and thrown through the gate.
Yeah, I think the only reason we don't do that at the moment is because there's 6 of them. It's fairly easy for us to type them up, and that is the only reason we're not doing that. And there's a real question mark about why we're bothering, because we could just save ourselves a shit ton of hassle. And crucially, it's not just the hassle. The last thing we want, it kind of spoils the magic if we have to email the player in between the events and go, we couldn't actually read what you've put here. Did you say that you wanted to get in touch with Siaka or Santa Claus? Which one is it?
Yeah,
Because it's going to be a very different
uh,
plenipotentiary.
we don't. To be fair, we don't have a huge amount of that sort of hassle because the messages are short and because the Archmage is very incentivized to make sure their message is clear. About the closest I can think of that we get to an issue is if we haven't had one, we immediately panic that we've had one and lost it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so we
yeah,
run around like
yeah.
blue
That's
ass
classic.
flies. But
Yeah,
yeah. What's the out-of-character process? I sort of touched on that earlier. The person who wants to send the message types it up, and they get a printout of that message at God in a readable font, along with the address that they're planning to send it to, so they can fold it all up into a message.
yeah,
And we do that because we want to create, at least in theory, the possibility that a message could be intercepted on the field.
yeah.
What we don't want
We're
is
not
somebody sending a
supposed to.
blank piece of paper, and then going up to God to write up their letter in which they offer to betray the entire empire for a villa in Asavia or what have you. We want that message to exist physically in play for the amount of time it takes you to take it down to a suitable autumn magician and then to cast a spell on it. I'd be fascinated to know if many autumn magicians insist on reading the messages they're sending, or whether they're just happy to be complicit in treachery and underhand behaviour.
The critical thing for us is that by insisting on that mechanism, we're creating that opening, isn't it? There's probably, I really hope somewhere there's an autumn mage who's like, no, I don't send winged messages. I won't call a winged messenger from the autumn realm to carry your message without knowing damn fine what's in the message. But
I really wish we had the NPCs. I would
wouldn't
love
it be
us to have
wonderful?
a couple of costumes of sort of like Mercury with a bird's head who would pop up when you cast the ritual. And sort of like, what? What are we taking this message to, mate? Ah, yeah, to the slave owners of Asavia. Brilliant! I will definitely take that message right now. Caca! It would be a memorable role-playing experience, if nothing else.
It would. Yeah, I mean, you're laughing.
But it's a direction we're trying to take stuff at the minute.
It is. I really like Swim Leviathan's depths for that exact reason. It creates a role playing encounter.
We talked,
And
didn't we,
actually,
about changing Ephesus's scales to work in a similar way to Leviathan's.
Four-winged messenger would be more interesting if it literally called a little autumn herald from the realm who turned up and was like, "Yeah, got anything for me personally? A tip? I'll help your message get there faster, mate." Also there's just so many possibilities.
Incidentally, I think we've just answered how we'd improve the process. So we'd
Yeah.
add Mercury to the mix.
Yeah. But actually, it's more interesting, isn't it? It's also interesting if winged messengers turn up with messages to deliver at the ritual sites and then sort of spread out looking for the person they're looking for, or more likely ask a nearest PC going, "I've got this message offering to betray the empire to the Asavians. I've got their response. Can you find Bob for me?"
You're laughing, but I do want to remind you that postman NPCs are something we identified as literally one of the worst NPC roles, apart from gate guards.
That's true. Yeah.
But yes, so
Yeah, but
how much cooler would
messages.
Ephesus's scales be if you sent a message saying this is what I have to trade, and then a little Mephistophelian autumn herald turns up somewhere and says, "Right, here are the three offers we've had for your box. Let's negotiate and see which one you're going to go with." And I've got some leeway, I've got some red lines. It'd be certainly a lot more interesting than sticking in the box, pull the lever. And wait to see if you get 3 cherries or 3 bars or what have you.
Yeah, that's another risk. Yeah. Yeah. So more role playing. Every ritual that deals with an NPC, with an Eternal, can be improved by adding more extraneous role playing.
So Squealy Gulg 2 asks a sort of pair of related questions. Are there any overarching themes that you wish there'd been space in the realms to fit in? Or what magic tropes didn't make the flavour cut? Conjuration didn't make the flavour cut, incidentally.
Sacrifice didn't.
Yeah.
It's not a flavour cut, but
No.
Sacrifice didn't make the cut.
We didn't want another game where player characters' lives were a currency. Having done that, and it broadly didn't really work.
No, it didn't really work. No. No, it really doesn't. And it's really interesting to look at why, actually, very briefly, because if you create a soul economy, what you get is you don't get the Day of the Jackal, in which the brilliant assassin assassinates the French president so that he can gain power with the demon of the underworld. What you get is Jack the Ripper, somebody going out murdering prostitutes that no one will miss and no one will care about in return for some pile of lammies. It was
We used
just,
to have that problem
yeah,
all the time, even after we'd written up the. Because I remember writing it, the guidance for the various types of priest skills. Sacrifice said that it was a skill you should be using on people who are significant enemies of your faith or stuff like that. And we still got nothing but cake sellers.
yeah.
Yeah, cake sellers, the true enemy of the smith. With their cake.
Damn their little with damn their eyes.
I'm trying to think.
But it's not just sacrificing others; it's sacrificing yourself. We've always been super wary of. I will die in Bob's place.
Yeah. The obvious example is every year at least we get an arcane projection that says, "Can we move a curse or other negative effect from Bob to Kate?" But Kate's perfectly happy to have this moved to them. It's like, yeah, we don't want to create a scenario where a less important character can take on the burden for a more important character, or at least because we don't believe there are less important and more important characters.
Yeah.
We
like to make our more important characters suffer.
Yeah. Again, we tried some of those ideas at Maelstrom, and they were just awful.
Yeah, they're awful.
What else didn't we include? There's a list of tropes we haven't gone with on the ritual theory page. So we knew very early on, for example, that we would not under any circumstances having you get to continue playing your dead character as a character.
Yeah, yes. Nobody comes back from the dead.
Nobody comes back from the dead in a way that allows them to continue playing the character. So we do have things like Whispers Through the Black Gates. There's a is it winter or summer?
Oh, you can speak with dead. You can speak with dead.
Yeah, true. You can speak with dead. There's a summer ritual. I think it's summer that lets you fight at full strength for 10 minutes after you're technically dead, but then you're gone forever. There's a winter ritual out there somewhere that lets you join the Grim Legion, but we're very clear with those that your character joins the Grim Legion and leaves this story and will not be appearing in this movie again.
Yeah.
That's more about providing a bit of additional closure, which is something we tried at most of that did work. I think the final event where we spent a lot of time telling people that they had won through various
closures. Yeah, closure's really powerful. I think in LARP, coming back from the dead is rubbish.
I'm trying to think if there's any themes I care about that we didn't include in the Eternals, but I don't think so because I wrote most of the Eternals, so I very carefully put in most of the themes that I was interested in.
The thing about our magic system is, bar those sort of things that are out for outward character reasons, it's fairly all-encompassing. The Six Realms tries to kind of cover everything. It's not like...
I've thought of one that we weirdly don't include, even though it is a major feature of our game. We don't have any teleportation. I mean, arguably, you could say that we have a ritual that teleports letters, but I'm not sure that I would count that as teleportation. But we don't have any teleportation.
Yeah, you're right.
The Sentinel Gate.
We don't.
I don't know how many people are old enough to have remembered Omega, but man, the teleportation, that was terrible. People just blipping all over the place. I can remember spending an entire evening of my valuable event time trying to kill your NPC, who would teleport whenever they were hit to somewhere else thanks to contingency. We don't have contingency either. We don't have any meta magic. Graham has
assumed I would teleport if it.
Oh, jeez, I didn't assume.
I
didn't assume anything. The people who we were, working with, assumed everything.
In fact, I had a load of contingency fire blasts, so if you hit me, I just shouted quad through at people randomly around.
I do remember trying to attract somebody's attention, so I could say, "Could we not just cast Dispel Magic on him first and then hit him?" And it's like, no, we have to hit him first and then dispel him in case he has. And anyway, players, they can always find a way to overcomplicate a simple situation.
But to be fair, we overcomplicated that with an overcomplicated rules system.
That is fairly true. But I'm glad we don't have teleport. I'm glad we don't have meta magic. Graham is a better person to talk to you about that, but it's all about how you shouldn't have magic that works as a multiplier on magic. Because it's so exploitable.
We don't have much contingency style magic.
We don't have if-then stuff particularly.
No. But that's very technical. It's not feel, is it?
No. Yeah, it's an odd one. It does strike me as a little odd that we don't have more if you lose a body hit, then something happens to you sort of stuff. I guess it's just because it's a faff mechanically for the person who has the effect on them. I don't want a situation where somebody goes, oh, hang on a second, when you hit me 2 minutes ago, I should have got a +1 to my armor class.
Yeah.
The order of the
Screw
stick.
that.
Have you ever considered adding to the list of spells being much more literal than the rituals and unable to be added to by the players? We actually did add a spell. Arguably, we added it and then took it away again, if I remember correctly. So Purge, which was Swift Purify, got added to the system because somebody pointed out that it was weird that there was a Swift Healer but not a Swift Purify.
Yep.
So we didn't do anything in character for that. We just said yes, that's an oversight and added it. And then when we changed, when we introduced the idea of fast casting, we took it back out again, along with Swift Heal, in fact. Would we ever add another spell?
Well, I think that yeah, absolutely, we categorically would. But I think it's important to appreciate that we went through a thought of every conceivable spell we could put in a LARP game, and we put them all in.
And also we put in Voice for the Dead and what do you call it, Shadow Pouch, Night Pouch.
Yeah.
So all the ones that would work, plus those two.
Plus these two. The point, yeah, Shadow Pouch is it should have been a ritual. That was a mistake. Should have been.
It is a ritual where it's much better and works and mechanically makes sense. But mostly it was the price I paid for being allowed to keep Voice for the Dead in.
Yeah. The point is that we put in every spell we thought we could possibly make work in a mass fest LARP system. So they're all in. Every spell we could think of. And we spent 18 months studying every magic system through every LARP game ever. So every spell that you've ever heard of that isn't in there, we discounted for some reason or other. You know, we thought it wouldn't work or it was problematic.
We've occasionally talked about some ones. We've occasionally talked about whether some of the combat cores could be spells, and broadly discounted them because we want to keep clear water between combat cores and spells.
It's not because I mean, let's be clear. It's not because these spells can't work. It's because they don't work in our system or they reduce game diversity. A classic example, a common spell in a LARP game is fear. You cast the spell, the person is feared, and they have to run away from you. That doesn't exist in Empire. And part of the reason it doesn't exist, does it? I'm right.
You're right that what we don't have is a spell that says you are afraid and must run away. What we have instead is a spell that says you are subject to an irresistible magical force that forces you backwards.
The difference is because some people don't. We don't want to force the characterization onto you that you're afraid. We're happy to force the characterization onto you that you're pushed back by an irresistible force. That's fine. But we don't want to say your brave, heroic warrior is literally so terrified that he runs away, because effectively what we're doing there is interfering with the way you role-play and present your character. That's an example of the kind of considerations that we would go through when we look at any conceivable spell.
Part of the reason we did that is we moved all of those kind of spells. I remember a spell from another large fest system that I attended when I was young, which made somebody have to pretend to be your friend for 5 minutes. And that was awful both to cast and to experience. And in much the same way, Charm Person is one of the worst spells in Dungeons and Dragons. We moved all of that kind of mind control shit into role-playing effects, where we defined, I hope, a lot better what that actually means.
How it works, what the limitations are, who gets to determine it. And it's all done with rituals, so there's nothing off spells. You can't create a role-playing effect on someone with a spell. The point is that it's not like we ran up that list of spells and just went, oh, this will do, press on, let's go and do another bit. We spent months on it.
I'm trying to think. There was, I know one spell I still miss. I mentioned this occasionally, was Spell Battle, or whatever it was called. The one that would lock two mages in a spell battle until one of them ran out of mana. Didn't work in any way, shape, or form, but would have been cool in a 6-player game.
And if we ever run that 6-player game, Andy, we should definitely do that.
Oh, that was just going back a second. That was a theme we didn't include. We spent the better part of a year trying to make mage duels. I remember a whole discussion in which somebody was proposing that we should have basically a dedicated monster room who would provide the Magic the Gathering style creatures for wizards to fight each other with. We talked about special magical games because obviously Odyssey was doing that kind of stuff with their World Forge, and we just couldn't come up with something that was. We talked about Katarman, the way Enwo did it with balancing numbers against each other and apps and shit like that. We couldn't come up with anything that was workable in a 2,000 player game. Well, even a 1,000 player. Yeah. It's a shame in a way. I would love to see two mages who've had enough of each other finally call each other out and play Connect 4 on a giant Connect 4 board with in the conclave as wizards stand around going, he's only one off a red diagonal. She's got to block him, kind of thing. Okay, maybe that is just me. Should we move on to another question?
Yeah, if we've got one.
Kaplunk with 6 different colours of marbles representing the 6 realms, but massive. How to communicate and get involved with internals. This seems very difficult and comes down to talk to an archmage or find a herald in the field and hope for the best.
Yeah, so find a herald in the field is the worst way. That herald is probably doing something and he's going somewhere and he's busy with a piece of plot. We would never send a herald out of like, just go out, chill in the field, see if anyone wants to talk. We don't do that. So trying to badger a herald in the field is a bit of a fail state. Role playing with the archmage is categorically the way to go. And that's quite deliberately by design. There are some other avenues.
You could roll the dice on a declaration before the conclave.
In what sense?
So you could do a conclave declaration like this conclave thinks Adamant is the best Eternal ever, and the conclave is really grateful for all the assistance they've given us in building castles. And if that passes and gets a chunk of support, then there is a chance that we might do some sort of plot with that. But the likelihood that it'll be Adamant plot that directly affects your character is probably low. I think it's very much a random chance, and it could backfire horribly.
One of the keys is why are you trying to find that Eternal? Why are you trying to speak to that Eternal? And if it's because I really want to have an encounter with an Eternal, that is always going to be difficult. If you've got something specific that you want to offer that Eternal, then you've got a possibility. But yeah, it's not easy.
We will sometimes reach in and offer what you might call open opportunities. They're not massively common, but they exist. One of our plot writers, Kat Quatermass, is very good at constructing plots that give you an opportunity to come to the attention of an Eternal that she's running plot with. We also have things like Sredogwa will regularly do an open audience. We've had scenarios where an audience is open enough that anybody can get in and talk to somebody about something and give an opportunity to attract attention. I'm thinking of the stuff with Calidus, in which the Eternal himself isn't actively doing much in the audience, but there's various key points in the encounter where there's a possibility to attract their attention in a limited way. But that again is hit and miss. If what you're after is talking to Lothar and we're not running any Lothar plot, the Archmage is I think your only option.
Yeah,
and intentionally so.
Yeah, and that seems harsh, but you've got to consider if there's 500 players all trying to communicate with an Eternal, the question is which one should succeed.
There's this many Eternals as well. We literally cannot be running plot at an event with every one of them.
And the point is, every individual player will think, well, that the person who should succeed should be me. It should be me that gets to speak to the Eternal. And we're okay with that being the player's attitude. But it can't work for us as an organizer. We can't say, right, it's 500 players. They all think they should speak to an Eternal. So we'll run 500 audiences. That's not possible. Our view of Empire is not that the interaction really is between you and the Eternal. Our view of the game is that the interaction is between you and the Archmage as you try to find ways to persuade him to do what, or her, or them to do what you want. The game is that this person has got access to a resource that you want. Can you find a way to manipulate or trick or coerce or threaten or bribe them into doing what you want? So the interaction with the Eternal is the payoff, but the game is the interaction with the player. That's why Archmages control access to Eternals. Not it is partly it's to limit the number of audiences we do and to make it an opportunity cost. But really, it's so that to get there is to involve interacting with a PC, not an NPC, which is what would happen if you just had to hunt
Every
that.
plenipotentiary response setup implies that somebody has won at social PvP, whether it's the person who's convinced the Archmage or the person who's claimed the Archmage title so that they can harass the Eternal they want to talk to.
Yeah, which is obviously your other alternative. Yeah, and there's, straight away, there's a kind of, it opens up so many opportunities. If the Archmage isn't doing what you want, and obviously you need to start threatening that you're going to try and, declare and run against them, which you can do at any time in Conclave. Not any time, but at any Conclave in advance. So you've got leverage straight away to create a threat. No Archmage wants anyone running against them, because if nobody runs against them, they never get voted out. You can bribe them. Yeah, there's lots of options.
There's something
But
similar,
as Andy says, it's social PvP.
Social PvP. There's something similar with what do you call it, with foreigners. The ambassadors have a remit to communicate with foreign nations, and while other people can try and communicate with other foreign nations, we always weight the ambassador's communication more than the communication of the random person. It's not impossible to get involved in that kind of the game if you're not the ambassador, but the ambassador has a massive leg up, which is quite intentional. So there's also doing stuff. Doing stuff is again, it's another crapshoot, but it is a way to sort of come to the attention of an NPC power.
Yeah.
We've had plenty of circumstances, for example, where an Eternal, like, let's call him Endigoa, where Endigoa has spotted somebody doing terrible and unspeakable things and has created an opportunity to pop along and meet this fictional Eternal Endigoa, and talk about how they can provide additional assistance to doing terrible things in a hypothetical way. But that is, again, it's risky because it requires us to actually notice.
Yeah, but there's a subtle but really important point here, which is that if we thought our Eternals were really important in the game and were really significant and a major focus of the game, it would be deeply problematic that how difficult it was to speak to one, because essentially they'd be like, well, here's the plot and here's how difficult it is to access. We don't really think of it that way at all. We think, I think of the Eternals as a really minor element of the game world. They are the backdrop of the game world. To me, Endigoa is not really any more important than what the Yutun thralls in the marches are thinking, or the the inhabitants of Cask or whatever. They're just a random offstage NPC that may or may not have an opinion and may or may not have a view on something. They're interesting because you can talk to them and they're magical and so forth. The point is, they're fundamentally less important to the game than the other players. It's the players that are moving and shaping the empire. It's the players that are pushing the empire in one direction or another and determining policy and what the empire does. So the whole game is around the interaction of the players. The Eternals are just part of the currency of which that game revolves.
So Levalus asks, why isn't invisibility a thing you can do with magic?
Well, that's an excellent question. Anyone who can no longer see me on the Twitch channel is welcome to comment on why we don't include invisibility.
I certainly can't see you, but I'm just going to get my sword and shield out for no reason.
No reason.
I'm just checking that they're still working, and I'm moving cautiously while angling my body towards that tree behind you, which I think is quite dangerous. And our conversation about how we're planning to murder Gerard's character, I'm just going to change the subject and start talking about the weather instead.
One of the problems is that any magic that relies on the opponent, the PvP opponent, let's assume that, and usually if you're doing an invisibility spell, there's a PvP opponent. So any spell that relies on the PvP opponent to lean into the role-playing basically says this game is going to penalise good role-playing and reward bad role-playing. So if you go, oh, that person's invisible, I'll just absolutely genuinely act like I can't see them, we're going to penalise you because you're going to suffer as a result of that. But if you're perhaps not the best role-player in the world, and as Andy says, you start backing away and getting your weapons out for no reason, you'll get a massive benefit. So we don't include spells that reward bad role playing and punish good role playing, or we try really hard not to. Now, interestingly, we have had a ritual that made you invisible to certain Balorn creatures,
Hmm.
which of course are all NPCs. There's less of the same issues don't quite apply when it's NPCs.
Our issue
Um,
with that one was communicating to them, easily communicating to the monsters which which
mm,
PCs were invisible to them.
yeah,
Because finger in the air doesn't work in that regard, I don't think. Incidentally, you don't even have to be a bad role player. I once ran at a time when I could run across an entire field to try and save somebody from an invisible opponent I couldn't see, but hadn't spotted from half a field away was invisible.
ooh,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. If you don't spot the hand gesture,
Yep.
then they're mysteriously visible. The the invisible person is
Is
mysteriously
mysteriously
visible.
visible. Yep. So what we'd need is
Unfortunately.
an invisibility spell that only affects people within about 5 feet.
Yeah, yeah. It's further away from that. They can sort
Which
of roughly make you out.
which is doable, but would be an odd one. I could see a knight, or rather, I couldn't because invisibility doesn't work. But with something like the night realm, you could certainly have a night spell that makes you invisible to everybody within 5 feet, but very visible to everybody else. Um, so that's why where we have concealment style plot, or fogs or what have you, the night realm we joke makes you provides you stealth by making it very apparent there is somebody stealthy nearby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Comes back to teleportation as well. It's again, it's just a step too hard to fit in with what you see is what you get kind of field.
There's actually quite a low fantasy sort of ethic to the magic. You don't throw any fireballs, you don't turn invisible, you don't teleport. Occasionally we obviously like the Sentinel Gate does indeed teleport you, but you don't just see people vanishing around you. You don't see a rain of fire. And you don't see these things because we can't literally make you see them. And we weren't really interested in having the magic make special effects happen that we didn't have the budget for. So
Yeah, we'd hopefully never tell you that you're going onto a foggy battlefield. We'd make the battlefield foggy.
yeah, yeah.
Um, bu- 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 bu. Contingency teleport, seasonal stacking, except the farm rituals seems like a weird thing to ban. What's the reasoning there? I assume that's a reference to that very specific farm ritual sequence that has a spring, summer, autumn, winter ritual that you cast in sequences.
I'm not sure if the argument is why have you allowed the farm ritual or why have you banned everything that isn't the farm
I
ritual?
think for the context, it's why have you banned everything that isn't the farm ritual?
Oh, because I would never do that farm ritual again. It's bloody awful.
Mm,
It's computationally a nightmare.
mm.
The code that one set of rituals consumes more code than all the other rituals in the game currently. It's convoluted. It is the sort of thing that works well in a tabletop game, but doesn't work particularly well in a fest. It has theoretical. Oh God, I could go on at length why I hate that ritual. The only thing I like about it is the flavour of a farm in which you follow the sequence and the cycle of the seasons, and that's really nice. But it's just really kludgy the way one ritual builds on another, and it's meta magic. It's
Yeah.
everything we say we avoid.
It has like you say, it has some positives, and most of them are thematic. I regret the fact that it ties the realms of spring, summer, autumn, and winter to the seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter a little bit too tightly for my liking,
Yeah,
particularly
which is a
early on
clear mistake.
when we were trying to get across the fact that they're not actually spring, summer, autumn, and winter, except they kind of are. It's weird in that there are to get the full effect equal to Rivers of Gold, you have to have multiple realms and spend 3 months bouncing it all up and stuff. So yeah, we actually looked at whether we were going to expand that again a couple of years ago when we were doing part of our Magic review, and we discussed whether we could just get rid of the stacking element. But I think it's interesting in the farm rituals just about, so they survived the cut. I'm not saying
Yeah,
they will
and,
always continue to survive.
and I'd done the code already by then.
Yeah, that is a bit of a weight on these sort of things. So
a
Yeah.
bit, but it's like at the point where the work's done, it's like, oh, we could just go and sack it all off. I think maybe one day we will sit down and redesign those Thorn rituals. I'm just sitting here now thinking there are cooler ways to do this.
Frankly, arguably, the sole thing you would need to do is just cut the stacking. The fact that the rituals work better in specific seasons tied to the realm's theme isn't necessarily a problem.
There's a bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of things, but it'd be something for us to sit down and spend a few weeks over a winter looking at and just coming. Oh, there's got to be something better than this. There's got to be something more interesting, more engaging. There are just serious design flaws with that whole stacking bullshit.
You can tell that we think there's a design flaw if something only appears in one specific place and doesn't appear anywhere else. Because we are, I don't know about you, but I'm fundamentally quite lazy and like to reuse mechanics and ideas. Quad maligned. Apparently, somebody is replacing with John Cena. I understand that he's an actor come wrestler.
Do I get to be The Rock?
You are in no way cool enough to be The Rock, I'm afraid.
I was going to run for American president.
I would quite like to be Mick Foley. I think he's a fine performer and by all accounts an excellent human being. For a man who looks like a tramp who's been hit in the face with a chair, and I like that aesthetic. I
don't know anything about wrestling. I only know The Rock. I'm out.
You don't know Roddy Piper?
It's funny you should mention it, but no.
Sorry, have you never seen They Live, the excellent satirical John Carpenter movie about capitalism?
Is it a zombie movie?
No, it's actually an alien invasion movie.
Is it an alien invasion movie?
It is an alien invasion movie, Matt. You don't watch it? Yeah, okay, fine. No, fine. With any luck, they'll remake it as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there's a chance you might see it.
There's a chance you see that films like that will be scary. I don't watch scary films. Okay. They scare me.
Sweet Bob says the same arguments we apply to invisibility also apply to things like charms, lie detection, mind reading, and telepathy, which are all, of course, things we broadly don't include in the game. Man, mind reading and lie detection.
Fond experience of having an entire event ruined by someone reading my mind.
Really?
Oh yeah, just utterly ruined an entire weekend event. I'd done lots of exciting, fun PvP all weekend, got away with murder, done all sorts of clever things. And then at the end of the weekend, somebody went, I'll read his mind. And it was all right, because I knew I was going to have my mind read. So I'd arranged for another character to remove all the offending memories after I'd done all the naughty stuff. So I was feeling pretty chuffed with myself, and the ref was like, yeah, there's nothing there. His memory's just a massive cheese with holes in it. And then the person went, oh, what does he think of fairies? And I went, oh, my character hates them. And it was off to the dungeons with me. And it was the most miserable experience I'd ever had, because I just basically screwed my character by being honest about what my character thought when somebody read my mind. It was awful. Awful. Mind reading sucks.
I ran a vampire live role-playing game for quite a while, which has strong themes of mind reading and truth spells and similar. And dear. Anyway, that is one of the reasons I don't support their use in live role-playing, because they are so annoying being stood there as a ref thinking, is this person lying, or are they just answering the question in such a very precise way they can convince themselves they're not cheating?
Yeah, I was the victim of some cool social PvP, which was awesome in the game, and I spent 2 years getting my revenge, putting all the pieces in place, and then at the key moment I was able to produce my charge. It was like Jacques Hughes, knowing of course that everything I said was true and that the other person was guilty of sin, and they put on a truth-telling device, just said no, none of that's true, and that was that.
Oh, so that's a good one. Divination spells in a system that also has easily accessible stuff that allows you to give false results to divination spells.
Yeah.
Undetectable lie versus lie detection.
Oh,
I'm not saying that's lazy game design, but that's lazy game design.
Lazy game design.
So
we don't have any of that shit.
No, this spell will detect lies except when it doesn't.
Except when it doesn't. Yeah. All of that stuff works fine in a tabletop game. It works, Yeah, within the context of if you've designed your game to have it in. For the love of God, don't put mind reading into a game without thinking really carefully about what that does. Don't put truth detection into a sleuth game. You've really got to think really, really hard about
We're back to the
context.
wider discussion about the fact that if you give your players the ability to do something, it should do the thing that they think it's going to do.
Yeah,
Which is, I understand, a whole discourse in the tabletop role playing design circles about DMs trying to get round abilities that players have got.
yeah. Your character's abilities exist to empower them. They should do the thing they say they're going to do. But we don't have any of that mind reading, truth telling, any of that, because again, it rewards bad role playing and penalizes good role playing.
How did you come to the decision of which spells to give all magicians by default? So the default spells are Detect Magic, Operate Portal, and Create Bond. So the first
They are.
sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, and also technically, use Mage Armor and use Magic Implements are also functions of being a magician. So the first thing we did was we gave you all the abilities we thought you would need to have to be a magician in our game.
Don't you need a skill like Battle Mage or something?
You do for Mage Armor. My apologies, but the implements you don't, apart from staff. So it's a bad example. But anyway, we gave you the basic abilities that we thought would be cool for playing a magician on the field.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. That's not the way I'd look at it.
How would you look at it then?
I think we gave you the spells that were bread and butter mechanical. Stuff you probably wouldn't buy.
You're right. I suppose nobody would take that everybody would want.
Yeah. We can't pick. You can't pick between heal and
go to Conclave.
And go to Conclave. It doesn't. You're just gonna. You have to pick heal because people's lives might hang in the balance. Effectively, stuff like Detect Magic, Create Bond, and Operate Portal are bump stops. They are the sort of thing that you kind of resent having to pay for. It's not. You're not like, oh yeah, really, yeah, this is going to really give my character something they couldn't normally do otherwise. But it's just a load of bread and butter stuff that's just useful. But you can build a whole magician out of the heal skill. So it's designed to give you the basic stuff that you wouldn't really want to pay for, but it's just a useful add-on to your character, and will give you bread and butter stuff to do in the field, and then give you all the spells to pick on. That's the spell my magician can cast, or those two are the spells my magician can cast. I'm going to be a battle mage and do repel. I'm going to be a healer and do purify or whatever. Whereas obviously, if we put that spell in with magician, we'd have effectively been pushing if every mage got heal, that would change the game dramatically. Would change what it meant to be a magician.
Oh, what we could have done is designed it so you get all the spells for being magician.
We could, yeah. Obviously, then the skill would have been vastly more expensive, and every magician would have been the same.
Yeah.
One of the things people quite like in role-playing games is thinking that their character is different to other people's characters. So being able to pay less the magician and pick the spells you want gives you an ability to tinker and go, but I can do this, which it works for some people. But you're not wrong. We could have just said, yeah, it's a 6-point skill, gets you all the spells.
Levolius is asking for some clarification. Is it with the farm rituals? Is it that the back end work and tying to the realms? Oh, sorry. Is it the back end work and tying the realms too much to the seasons they're named from that is a problem? The tying the realms to the seasons is a minor consideration that mostly affects me and my.
I know it annoys both of us.
Oh, okay, yeah, but it's just an annoyance. The back end work is an example of how mechanically they are flawed. In that they require a huge amount of work to make any of that sort of stacking stuff work. But the main reason is
they play huge. But bear in mind that work's done now. If I wanted to reproduce it, I could just cut and paste it onto a new ritual.
So I think the for me the real reason is thematically I don't like them. I don't like the way they mechanically sequence.
I could do a Matt wall of text on why they're wrong. Where would you like me to start?
Oh, we could look at doing a Matt wall of text. We'd always do an Empire writing. Matt writes a wall of text about why farm rituals are wrong and evil.
Oh, the first point is that most people who build a ritual magician are going to build it around realms. Maybe one realm, maybe two realms. So you say, okay, my character is a landskeeper in the Marches. I have mastery of the Summer Realm, and I'm here to help the can't remember what they're called now, the landowners, not the stewards
Yeoman.
and the yeomen, keep their farms healthy and productive. And I do that by performing these important rituals that boost the production of your farm. And I do that at every. Oh, I don't do that every event. If I only do that once a year, my skills only work once a year, unless I have to buy these other realms and sort of basically structurally badly weaken my character and build my character in a way that doesn't really work very well at all in the mechanical system. So basically, I can build a shit character and be shit, or I can be good at what I do, but only be able to do it one event a year. Whereas the people who are in the league going, yes, my prince, I can improve the production of all your businesses, make rivers of gold run through them, and I can do this event after event. So you will always need my services. You'll always have to barter. So straight away, the fact that you've done this weird fucking rotating seasonal bullshit means that effectively individual players can't build a character that works at every event. That's just flawed. You don't want to turn and go, oh yeah, it's the winter event where none of my skills work. It's just
So
rubbish.
yeah, it's interesting. I can't think of another actual ritual as opposed to we do it very rarely we do it with arcane projection, but I can't think of any other ritual that only works at one event.
Arcane projection's fine, got no issue, but we wouldn't want you to have a bunch of rituals that only work at one event. And yeah, that's exactly what we've done with the farm rituals. There are obvious. So, where can I go on? How much time have I got to explain why these rituals are broken?
I think we've focused on them a little bit, but I'm also very interested by an exciting idea that Space Magician has come up with. We could remove the farm rituals and instead introduce workers you need to pay and warehouses to store crops. I like that idea because I imagine that what you could also have to do is load the crops onto ships. By coordinating with ship owners, with fleet owners, and they could move those crops around and unload them at various places at various times and make them available to the populace. And maybe there'd be some sort of complex algorithm maybe that would determine how much those food crops were worth based on how many people required the food for a given downtime and how much money had been paid to those people. You could build an entire game, couldn't you, Matt?
You could, yeah. That is an in-joke that only 500 of our players will get.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, we could do all of that shit. I mean, I presume it was a joke question.
I don't know. It was yes. Space Magician says exactly. Get coding, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah, the best play-by-mail that would occasionally have meetups in fields ever, Maelstrom.
Let's play by mail with meetups in fields. Yeah.
Yeah,
let's not do that.
Swishbob says, "Why isn't there a battlefield counterspell?"
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good question. Why isn't there a battlefield counterspell?
So there is a very, very specific battlefield counterspell. Swift Purify will remove entangle, paralysis, and something else.
And the other one.
It might be repel. I wouldn't swear at that, but it might be repel. Oh no, what we're talking about is venom and weakness. But it also does paralysis and entangle in theory. I'd be fascinated to know if anybody ever Swift purifies entangle.
But yeah, that's a good example of a counterspell. Why don't we have, by my power, I counter that spell?
One reason is because because of the way battle magic works, the person you are counterspelling the repel on is 20 feet away and accelerating by the time you finish the counterspell lyrics. Also, it would be a ranged call. So you would yell counterspell, and everybody who's just been hit by a magical effect would have to turn around to see who you're pointing at.
Yeah. Also, there's a fine balance between who is the dominant person on a battlefield. And what we didn't want is that we didn't want a scenario where the magicians ruled the roost on the battlefield, but we wanted them to have their moment and be cool. Battles are where warriors go out, so it's primarily a warrior sphere. But if you're playing a battle magician, we wanted you to have a cool, iconic role on the battlefield. What we didn't want your cool, iconic role on the battlefield to be was about countering other magicians' spells. We didn't want magicians going, by my power, shatter that sword. By my power, I counter that sword. By my power, shatter that sword. By my power, I counter that sword. That spell. It just felt to call and response, nullification. And actually, a lot of our game isn't really about nullifying other things other people have done. It's about dealing with the consequences. You said that Swift Purify is a counter, but it isn't really a counter. It's about dealing with the consequences. Yeah.
I've got a crazy anecdote. There was once a games designer who was writing their very first club linear system way back in the ancient days when universities did club linear systems, and they had dodges that allowed you to yell dodge when you were hit by a weapon, and you wouldn't take the effect of being hit. But the game also had true strike, which meant that your dodge didn't work. So you would somebody would yell, a swashbuckler character class, say, would yell dodge, and the monster would yell true strike. But because it didn't seem fair to allow the attacker to trump the defender, you could use another dodge to trump the true strike. So you would go dodge, true strike, dodge. But because it didn't seem fair to prioritize the defender, if the attacker had another true strike, they could yell true strike again. And I will tell you right now that games designer realized very quickly that was not creating what might be called a serious role-playing excitement during battles, but was massively comedic. I don't know what my point was. I just like occasionally mentioning that even, award-winning games designers occasionally introduce time-freeze celerity or dodge, true strike, dodge, true strike. I think the longest chain we ever saw in the game was like 8, 4 on either side, because there was no limit to the number of dodges you could buy if you were a swashbuckler. Good times. I forget my point. I don't think I had one. It was just an anecdote. It's a lovely sunny day.
That was why there's no counter spells.
That's one of the reasons no counter spells. I think it was Craig Burnett who pointed out it's just not fun to use your ability and then have somebody saying it doesn't affect me. It was way back when we were doing Spiel and had the penguins.
There was a version of Warhammer Fantasy Battle that I used to play years ago, in which each side would get a whole hand of spells, and the spells were really, really cool. Did cool shit, but that wasn't what you used them for. The other person would cast a spell, and you'd use one of your cards to counter it. Then you'd cast a spell, and they'd use one of their cards to counter it. And the net result was you burn through all of this and see if one of you had one more card than the other to get an actual spell off.
I can see how the argument would work because you're using up the spells you actually want to cast. Presumably, the expectation is you would weigh up a spell your enemy is casting and decide whether you wanted it to not happen. More than you wanted to have the thing you wanted to do happen, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Although you'd have to know exactly what your opponent's spell did before you made that decision.
Actually, what happened in practice is it was just a round of spell count, spell, just to see who had the spell left at the end. It was done. That's why there's no counter spell. Can I go back to ranting about farm rituals?
I feel that that we've already had too much about farm rituals. I also worry that they push the marches too much in the direction of folk horror. Yeah, kind of. There was another question, but I've lost it. Switchbob says that Detect Magic is the most heavily used spell in the game, which is interesting. Switchbob is a Raff.
Oh, right.
Bounce, go on a quest. It's annoying when someone doesn't hear your counter spell. Yeah, that's very true. Actually, that's one of the reasons we don't use range stuff. It was Matt Johnson, Wixie Johnson, who pointed out their experience at CP talked very cogently about the experience of point and click spellcasting on a battlefield. Not the cheating that was the problem. It was the people who genuinely just didn't. Swilly 2 has pointed out the question that Lavolis had asked further up. I'd missed that one. Where's it gone? What ritual are you most proud of? Would you hold up as the best ritual? Not most powerful or efficient, but like most interesting and coolest. I'm a bit worried because Twitch doesn't appear to be moving at all.
Maybe the internet's broken. Maybe it's gone green.
I have been having a few difficulties with my internet recently.
Wait.
It's froze. Give me 2 seconds.
We apologise for these technical difficulties. The exits are located here and here. In case of an emergency, a mask will drop down. You should place this over your mouth and breathe through the mask.
What? Give me a second. I will.
I was doing the evacuate the airplane speech.
Did you think that was helpful?
I say something.
Right, we are showing us live. I think it's just my my tablet. All right, yeah. Okay, good.
Got to
Well,
keep our thousands of fans entertained.
I think we've got
Both
like
of them.
6 people watching. Okay.
Woo!
So we now appear to
Big
be
time.
moving on. Favorite ritual, best ritual. You go first.
Oh, you twat. Um,
Because I've loads. I can just froth happily about rituals that I really like for ages.
I think my favourite ritual is Swim Leviathan's Depths. Things that I like about it, I like the little whale figurines because they're little whale figurines, and that's cool. The world needs more little whale figurines.
I agree. More of our rituals should include material components that are cool and have a non-mana cost.
I like it because it puts the Eternal in a box and it gives you a way to access that box. We talked earlier about how players want to get to Eternals. Well, Swim Leviathan's Depth is a way to speak to an Eternal, but it controls the interaction so that we can then deliver on the kind of required level of interaction that the players want. It creates a short interactive encounter. And it gives the players a tool, a way to find things out, but that isn't just, well, I want to know the answer to this question. It only answers questions in very specific ways. It plays into one of our themes, that one of the things Eternals are for is for questioning a realm. You can't ask the Day Realm what it thinks, but you can ask Leviathan. Leviathan will have a view. And so, yeah, so I love it. I think Swim Leviathan's Depths is one of our best rituals. I wish more rituals worked that way.
Agreed. I quite enjoy doing them as well. I think I certainly find them an enjoyable role-playing opportunity to just poodle out, stand behind a pillar and bellow at people while doing an impression of a Shakespearean actor pretending to be Churchill doing a Murloc impression, which is the feel I'm going for. Spring-wise, I think it is a toss-up between Rivers Run Red, which I really like for all sorts of reasons, and Irrepressible Monkey Spirit, just because it's called Irrepressible Monkey Spirit, and no other good reason than that. Summer-wise, it's the one whose full name escapes me, but it's called something like Swim Alongside the Behemoths. Just because, well, mechanically, all it does is give you a bunch of hits. The role-playing effect is you feel like you're massive. And you should stomp around being massive, and if you use this ritual too often, you should swim off into the sea and disappear to become a giant whale creature in the Summer Realm. And I feel that element of that ritual is not exploited enough.
I like some of those crazy night rituals that a certain Varushkan night magician has created.
Oh yes, some of Smargle's rituals are very entertaining. The ones that have hit Imperial Law, and the ones that haven't. I used to dislike intensely the one that gives you a dream of riding a horse. But the more I've thought about that, and the more I've sort of looked at it, the more I think it's a really cool night ritual. It's a weird one because of the way it actually works, given that you've got no way of knowing whether the experience you're getting of riding a horse is really what it was like to ride a horse back 400 years ago. But it's still cool. It's still weirdly cool. The fact it targets 2 people as well, so you can both have a dream of riding the same horse. If I remember right, is one of the elements of it. I know I'm not alone in this, but I don't think a lot of other people do. I like the rituals that are designed to let a magician do loads of attack calls over a short period of time. Particularly the one that lets you poison large numbers of people. And I think one of them, it's maybe the one that repels you. I have a feeling comes with a role-playing effect that makes you more inclined to respond to anything that surprises you by repelling it or venoming it. I forget which one it is. And I just laughed all the time I was writing that particular effect in. Autumn, I like Caldwing Messenger and Ambassadorial Gateway. I like the rituals that allow you to give other people the ability to access stuff. Winter, it's probably the Sorin ritual. It's one of the it's the one that gives you +1 winter magic, but at the cost of an unhealing wound. I just like the imagery on that one, particularly the new version of that one where it just makes you better at cursing things with any type of curse magic. We've touched briefly on night. Twilight Masquerade, I think, has provided a lot of role playing to people. Surprising amounts of it. And day, Oh no, what is it called? It's called something like Revelation of the Uttermost Spheres. It's the day mass paralyze ritual that can blind the caster and send them mad.
I like the Empire Enchantment rituals,
Oh yeah,
Hello the Green
yeah,
World,
yeah. Hello, the
and
Green World, Wondrous Forest of the Nights, and I think it's Bright Eyes Glitter in the Dark.
I like the fortification summoning rituals. There are some problems with them, but I like them because they let sort of mid-level covens have a really crucial role in the strategic game.
Um,
There's a Wintermark coven that I think saved a whole territory just because they always summon this
Um,
fortification.
the Winds of
Mm.
War are quite entertaining. I enjoyed writing them, in which the Jotun have turned up, not mob-handed, but with enough people to cause major problems in Calavesa, but they just can't get anywhere because this coven has been resolutely casting um, Dripping Fen on Calavesa every season. So the Jotun just basically wander around in circles, getting covered in mud and attacked by alligators until they give up and go home. And there's something very entertaining about that whole sequence. Um,
That though, because if you're playing in that coven, it's like literally your command of magic and your careful vigilance has literally sent the invaders scurrying with their tail between their legs when they tried to invade your home. What could be cooler than that? That's you know I hope they felt like they were the bee's knees, because we thought they were the bee's knees at
we
that
thought the
point.
business at the time. There's a whole load of stuff. We've tried to make as many of our rituals have a little bit of extra interest in them beyond the mechanical stuff that's on them. I still want. We talked about this recently. How odd it is that only some of the army enchantment rituals have a role playing effect on the general.
Yeah. That
Um,
needs sorting.
I'd really like to do another pass through the higher magnitude rituals and make sure that more of them have role playing effects. Arguably, particularly given some of the work we've been doing recently that is still under an NDA, I think it is weird that any of the personal enchantments don't come with a role playing effect.
Yeah.
Every personal enchantment should have a role playing effect on it, I think, and we should try and fix that at some point.
Mm.
So yeah, so that'd be my that's a quick run through of rituals that we quite like. There'd be more if I had the ritual list in front of me. I'm pretty confident. I could say nice things about all of them. I might even do that at some point. That'd be a nice way to generate some content that requires a little effort.
You done? What's your favourite ritual?
That is what I just did.
No, as in
Oh yes,
post on.
as a Patreon thing. No, not yet. But I could do a breakdown of them all with trivial facts like I did with the Eternal names. But we shouldn't
Mm.
talk about that because I don't want to
No.
waste my one promoing my business opportunity per year on a Twitch chat. Um, okay, Iron with underscore says, will you be changing the Eternal Audience rituals to match the role playing of Swim the Leviathan's depths? Swim is awesome, but others don't have people hiding behind and shouting. Um, kind of. I think we talked about that earlier on. We'd like to see a lot more of the rituals like Ephesus. I want to change the name of Ephesus Scales, incidentally. I hate trying to work out where to stop saying Ephesus when I'm trying to put the possessive apostrophe on it. So Ephesus
Right.
Scales is just awful to say. I'd rather call it Scales of Ephesus
You're not
because it
wrong.
has a definite
Yeah,
end.
in answer, yes, we are slowly. It's on our list. We try something and we see if it works. And I feel really positive about Swim Leviathan's depths in many, many ways. I think it is. It's really functioned well at cleaning up that ritual. We always get the questions. There's never an issue with that anymore. They're always recorded on the system. You put the question in first, and then we can prep the answer and be ready. Previously, you did all your role playing and then nothing happened. And then you turned up and there was a sort of a hasty scrabble as we tried to find your question and get the answer. So what we did was we redesigned that so that the you submit your little whale with your question, and there's no big showy ritual role playing, but then you go and do your big showy ritual, and then Leviathan turns up to give the answer. And we're trialing that with Swim Leviathan's depth. It's a good mechanism. I like it. More
And
eternal.
you only have to look at Scales of Ephesus to see where the drama is. It's not at the point where you put the items in the box and cast the ritual on them. It's at the point where you open the box to find out what has been sent back again. So if we just off the top of my head, we would twitch that round so that you send the item, or or you give a clear indication what the item is, and then you do the ritual to give the opportunity for the Ephesician box counter to discuss with you what you're going to get out of it, because the drama is in the what you get, not what you're sending away. Everybody knows what you're sending because you've just piled it into a box.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to do a redesign on Scales of Ephesus. There's a whole deal or no deal game there. We'd have to think really carefully
Oh,
about it.
there's a load of cool things you can do with it. I could see somebody like, let's say, John Cole, to pick somebody completely at random, turning up with 3 boxes and saying, "Well, here's box one. Box one contains this. Now, do you want that or not? Because if you say no, you can see what's in box 2, but you can't have what's in box 1." And we could quickly have 2 or 3 recurring NPC heralds that we'd send out largely at random, who'd have their own personalities. Even something as simple as that would make that ritual so much more fun for us.
Challenge, yeah, but obviously the cost would shoot up because otherwise people would cast it. One of the things that people cast Scales of Ephesus on a lot is cake and magic items that have run out and bits of paper, and they're a freaking nightmare. We can't put a value on cake, so we generally send back fruit because we've usually got fruit in the hut. A bit of paper, well, we usually send back a bit of paper. That's an equivalent value. Sometimes we'll scroll something on it. Or an expired magic item, at which point I have to go and fish through the bin for another expired magic item and send that back to the players. And it's just like, who is benefiting from this? And nobody's benefiting. So that is a ritual that clearly needs a good dose of looking at, and it could benefit from a Swim Leviathan's depths treatment.
Combing the beach is another one. So is Secret Missive to Sung. Only one of those 2 rituals, incidentally, has ever been cast.
Right.
And it's the Sung one. I don't think there's any point having a mystery about that. Nobody's ever cast Combing the Beach.
You could be the first.
Please don't be. So yes, so at some point we want to try and change the rituals that interact with Eternals to actually interact with Eternals, because that is cool. But we want to do them slowly so that we don't inadvertently create too many rods for our backs by committing to mandatory plot. Oh, what is it? The obvious elephant in the room is a Challenge of the Iron Duke.
Yeah.
We've done a bit of work to try and make that work better, but it's still a little bit touch and go. It requires a lot of backroom resources to make that ritual work. We have a
Challenge of the Iron Duke is my favourite ritual in the whole game, and my most hated ritual in the whole game. Is both of those things. I think it's produced some amazing stuff, and it's also produced some stuff where we have not been amazing.
I think it's the only ritual where I've given you the annual ultimatum that you either fix it or we delete it for like 4 years running.
Yeah.
You keep just managing to weasel out of it before I can actually take my fucking scissors to it. It's great in theory. It's great in theory. In practice, it is a headache of massive proportions.
Yeah, it's got issues.
Which Eternals do we wish had more game time? I'm actually going through the list in the Book of Eternals, just seeing.
Oh no, I don't. I mean, I just don't. I don't think about my game that way. I see the Eternals like a palette, and the players pick whichever one they want to paint with. I don't really care which Eternal it is. I wish Wendigo got more screen time, because
I was going to say it's the Winter Eternals for me. I like them. I like their themes, and I don't feel that they get as much opportunity to be as cool as some of the other Realms Eternals do. I think Kayla is really nice, but again, I guess she's more effective the less we use her. I really like Sorin. I like Wendigo. I like Wise Rangara. I wish we could do more. We could find the time to do more plot with Wise Rangara that isn't just about the Academy.
Great. Yeah.
Because our whole theme about wisdom and tradition is.
We should do a big Wise Rangara plot for this year.
The Day Eternals. I have a love-hate relationship with the Day Eternals. I think we've done some plot that could have been better with them.
We're very critical of our own plot, in fairness.
We're very critical of our own plot. But those are the ones I would want to do. I like the fact that we're getting a little bit more autumn plot into the game now. We had a period early on where we had a load of it that was very specific, but over the last couple of years of the game, we've had more plot writers enthused around autumn stuff. The Planet Potentiary has really helped with that, incidentally, because Autumn Eternals, they kept falling to the back of the list when people were putting Eternal stuff together, and now we do one every event. We've had some really nice ones. I've enjoyed the various markets we've done. They're crazy from a logistical point of view because there requires so many ribbons to be made up for stuff. But as I understand it, they're fun to play, and our NPCs certainly enjoy playing genie shopkeepers and goblin blacksmiths and stuff. And it's a chance to do something. It's a chance to do a jumble sale in the whole world. What's not to like?
What's not to like? But actually, we one of the things that we look for is, will our NPCs enjoy portraying this? That's really important to us. So yeah, we like the autumn sales.
Space Magician's sort of gone back to some stuff we vaguely talked about, but I think it might be worth talking about it explicitly. What is it you think makes magicians want to speak to Eternals? Why are Eternals in the game other than role-playing opportunities?
Oh, yeah, that is big. Right, well, Eternals can offer you things that you can't do with your regular magic. So that's point number one. That's why you'd want to talk to them. In the stuff that we can't talk about because covered by an NDA, I wrote a whole section talking about what an Eternal is for from the point of view of a certain kind of magician. And the idea to me is that, if you can get that Eternal and get that Eternal to do what you want, then it makes you more powerful as a magician. I like to see Eternals as there's a style of fantasy genre in which there are powerful magical spirits, and magicians bargain with them to become more powerful. And I think Eternals are close to achieving that when we do them well.
We've talked before about the fact that when we first started talking about the next game, which was about halfway through Maelstrom, we had that long conversation about the concept of goetic magic, of summoning up demons and bargaining with them, and how you could make that work in a live role-playing game. And we sort of came to Eternals, particularly after seeing some stuff Odyssey had done, by realizing that one of the logistical problems was getting the NPC to go to the player rather than the player to come to the NPC.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think they're first of all, they're about giving you access to something that you couldn't. If essentially that it's a way to role play with magic. So instead of just the day realm just doing whatever you want, now there are some personalities within the day realm. And to get the effects that you want, you're going to have to role play with them in a certain way to make the thing you want happen. And I think that's interesting. And I think it's more interesting than just going, oh, I want this to happen. They also have an advantage because they allow us to personify the realm. So if you want to ask a question, if you want to do a divination, the problem is that 50% of the time, the game organizers won't know the answer to your divination. And that is odd if you're asking the day realm, which is like literally supposedly knows everything. It doesn't know everything, but it's a magical realm of knowledge. And it looks odd if it doesn't know the answer to a simple question, but we may not know the answer to the simple question. So by personifying it, saying you can't ask the day realm, but you can ask Leviathan, it becomes more credible when Leviathan goes, oh, I haven't got any idea, don't know anything about that thing you've asked me about. It's not magic doesn't know, it's Leviathan doesn't know. So it creates us a mechanism to do those kind of questioning divination style spells, which I think is more interesting. Yeah, and it makes the world a little bit more magical.
So, thinking back, one of the things Eternals allowed us to do, Maelstrom had I think at the time, pretty revolutionary attitude to religion, in that it had actual gods who were not just bits of players' character backgrounds sort of brought to life. We actually ran them as gods who had things. But the problem was, because of the way it was set up, and there's a load of reasons why this was. I'm not going to go into details because I wasn't involved in the setup, but I had a lot of conversation with Harry about it. The gods were permanently separated from the players by a wall, and all they could do was push little notes through the wall to other players, and the notes were initially only allowed to be 3 words long, I think, or even 2 words. I think only 2 words. I think the only messages they were allowed to send were verb-noun combos, which was that was a disaster. I remember at least one player character got jobbed because somebody misunderstood the difference between this person is an undead horror must be killed, and this person should be warned about the importance of killing undead horrors. And so we had these gods, and they were powerful, and they had boons that they wanted to give to people, and the players wanted those boons, but they had no way of communicating with them. And we identified when we started doing Empire, that was awful. That if we were designing our time again, the Eidolons, the messengers, will be able to talk to the gods, because 10 seconds of interaction would resolve like 90% of the problems we had with the gods, the Eidolons, and their worshippers. That ineffability was shit. Fundamentally,
ineffability is shit.
If the only interaction you can have with Sodogwa is that Sodogwa occasionally stands up with a loud hailer and bellows, "Magicians are good," the opportunities for role playing and cool stuff around those are really limited. Whereas if you can spend 5 minutes talking with the Fat Eternal about why magicians are better than people who aren't magicians, you're not only get a role playing encounter, but you can ask questions and get clarifications and avoid stupid misunderstandings in favor of interesting misunderstandings and stuff. And that's one of the reasons we designed Eternals the way we did. That there wasn't an advantage to an NPC who you couldn't interact with. Yeah, we talked. Do you remember? Cool Winged Messenger for a very short period of time was going to involve video screens. And Pepper's ghost and sort of glass panes and stuff, so that you could actually chat with a representative of the foreign power. And that's where what is it called, the Lashanar chamber, the Caucus Forum. That's where the Caucus Forum came from, because it's much easier and more fun to talk to a foreign power than it is to receive 2-word imperatives through a wall.
If you're going to negotiate with some powerful entity, we want you to be able to get face to face with it, at least in some form. It just makes it more dynamic, more interesting.
In answer to the question, Wolfboy is not wearing a Lawmaster's chain, and you can tell because the ribbon on it says the Vagabond Worm, and the role-playing effect on it basically says you want to eat well, sleep often, and chat with magicians. This is very clearly Sodogwa's magical chain, and any resemblance to items that Andy Raff couldn't get his hand on in an earlier game is purely coincidental, and you should give no more thought to it. I certainly didn't nick it out of the prop box the minute I saw it. Yeah, you stop sniggering. I spent ages trying to get my hands on one of these legitimately. I wrote it into the brief for Sodogwa when I was writing him up, and as soon as I saw one in the prop box, I nicked it. What was
the last question? We've been on this a while.
Okay, do you want to do one last question? Okay, so
yes.
So actually, we've only got one last question, so that's cool. What was the concept stroke theory behind giving Urizen a way to have its own set of rituals? Was it just to turn Urizen Land of Magic theme up to 11? Given there has been a theme recently of giving plot boons to nations that lean into their flavour. To be fair, we've always tried to tailor nation-level plot to the flavours of the nation, so that's not anything new. It's just possibly more apparent with Urizen. So, Urizen lore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question other than yes.
Yeah.
It's about turning Urizen up to 11. We wanted to offer them a variety of different things that would make them more powerful magically. It's a challenge because obviously you write the setting, you go, Urizen is a land of wizards. These are the most powerful wizards in the Empire, blah, 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 blah. But they're just portrayed by PCs who've got 8-point characters. So they're exactly the same skilled magicians as anyone else. And in fact, other nations are bigger, so other nations have bigger covens. So actually the challenge for Urizen is that it's not easy to portray the most powerful magicians in the Empire. The logistical challenges are against them. And we want to feed that. We want to support that. We want to make the league rich. We want to make Dawn militarily powerful. We want to make Urizen masters of magic. So,
yes, that's it. Yeah, basically, that's it. One of the ways we think we can help them is by giving them rituals, not by giving them the ability to cast more powerful rituals, because that is something anybody can do, but by giving them access to a small group of rituals that only they can cast, the majority of which will be designed by the Urizen players, I think.
Yeah.
using their College of Magic. So yeah, so support the idea, because more power doesn't help, but uniqueness, being able to do something nobody else can do. And we were very worried early on that we were going to replicate the Kamakura builder problem, but the evidence is that just isn't really the case.
You're always fixing the problem from the previous game. Always classic problem in lock design.
It's
But
really
I am going to have to go.
No, that's
I've
fine.
got
That's fine.
family things to do.
No, right. Well, we've been at it for an hour and a half, which is about the right amount of time. Thank you all very much for coming. There will be YouTube. Like and subscribe. Click the bell. And we will see you another time, hopefully in the field. Right. Bye-bye, folks.
Soon.
Bye.